Taking a look at the last few months, the Ontario election, the New Brunswick election, and the Quebec election have one common theme. Voters are leaning towards newer options. And this could be a problem for the Liberals heading into next year's federal election. Joining us this morning to discuss is Adam Radwanski with the Globe and Mail. Good to have you with us, Adam.
Good morning.
Well, you follow this closely, as do I, and the rest of the country. But just to give a quick roundup, the Ontario Liberals, Quebec Liberals, had each been in power for nearly 15 years until these recent elections, when in both cases they lost official party status. And then, of course, we know in New Brunswick, a minority government that hadn't been elected in almost 100 years, that scenario. So if voters are going to the opposite of what is expected, what does this say about the political course that Canada is on right now?
Well, you've also got British Columbia where you got to change too. So I think what it says is there is a strong change desire. I mean, every province is different, and you can look at recent elections, for instance, in Quebec and New Brunswick, very different circumstances. In one case you've got governments changing. New Brunswick, it seems to change almost every election. In Quebec, the Liberals have been in power a long time, and it was more of kind of a fatigue. But I think generally you see voters looking for new options, and you've got parties in both Quebec and forming government, and in New Brunswick holding balance of power that are different options. And I think what that says is there's a desire among a lot of people for something different from the established parties, at least a willingness to look beyond those. And I think that has to be of concern to the political establishment generally around the country.
So then what does it say if we're taking a look at people wanting new options? How is that going to inform the current parties' platforms as we head into October of 2019?
That's a good question. I think what they really have to think about is how did they stay on top of and get ahead of what seems to be some degree of unrest, whether it's a feeling of being left behind. And you see this beyond just Canada, right? I mean, there's been sort of populist movements around the world, not as strongly in Canada. But I think you see people who feel left behind, whether it's by, to some degree, technological change, but certainly economic opportunity, or who feel as though the cost of living is impossible for them to meet and they're worried about affordability. And I think there has to be an aggressive attempt to deal with that. And what they really have to be careful of is a sense of complacency and a sense of not getting that, of being indifferent to people's concerns. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of stuff that's aimed at meeting people's sort of day-to-day needs and of showing that the parties are fully cognizant of the fact that a lot of people are having either difficulty making ends meet or feeling very insecure, even if some of the economic metrics look good. People's sort of insecurities may feel stronger than that.
Providing new options for people is something that you were just talking about. We saw, the creation of the UCP in Alberta, People's Alliance, which had been around for a while, now getting into power in New Brunswick, and then Maxime Bernier's party, the People's Party of Canada. Is that something that we could see more of in this next 12 months? Is new parties being created?
Well, I think at the federal level, the Bernier party is the one that's there to watch. I'll admit to being a bit skeptical about it, in that, first of all, I'm not completely convinced of his ability to lead a populist movement. I also think federally, the Conservatives, I think, have done a decent job, or do a decent job of straddling just right enough and sort of populist enough to maybe avoid that coming up on the right flank, as opposed to, say, in New Brunswick, where the PCs are a pretty centrist establishment party, or in Quebec, where there really hasn't been a right-wing populist party in power before. But I do think it's something to watch, and I think at all levels, people aren't as attached to parties as they used to be here, and I think there is a real willingness to look beyond traditional options the more they feel they aren't meeting their needs. So I don't think federally we're going to see a real change in the next few months, but I do think everywhere we can't discount the possibility of things popping up relatively quickly.
Adam Radwanski, good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.